What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you a test and combo video for the White Forest Horus profile I showed you all the other day. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to do two test stands going first, two test stands going second, so that you can see the randomized nature of the deck and how it synergizes and works well together. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you do not miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, after a very decent shuffle and a good old cut, we'll do our starting test stand of 5, beginning with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it's actually not a bad hand. Even though we've hard opened up something like the Happy and the Woes, which is not ideal to be opening up, the best thing about this is that your stuff like your White Forest spells and traps will actually be reset if you discard them off of Imseti. Now we do also have direct access to a starter in the form of the Peririzzi map, which is pretty much the reason why I play it. So you're technically increasing your count of being able to get your starter without needing to commit too much to the board. So you're going to start with the Peririzzi map. Yes, of course, it needs to be at the start of main phase 1, big sad, but this is going to get you direct access to your Estella, and I suppose on the plus side, you're not paying half your life points until you add the card. The only downside is, if they draw you here, you kind of cry a little bit. So, we're going to be resolving that. We're going to grab the Estella, we're going to take half our life points, and what you need to remember is the secondary clause on the Peririzzi map is that after adding a card, you cannot activate the added monster's effects or the effects of cards with its name until you normal summon that monster, which is why you morely go for Estella than LZ, but the idea is that Estella is going to be your one you're going to normal summon more times than not. So now that we've done that, you've obviously tried to bait out an Ash, because more times than not, some people will try and hit you with that on that point. And if they don't know you're playing the Imseti engine or the Horus engine, they might just let it fly. So now what you're going to do here is you're going to use Imseti, you're going to discard the Woes. This is obviously going to allow you to grab yourself a King Sark. But the best thing about all of this is you're going to be able to draw one more card, plus you're going to reset the Woes, and that can then become either additional fodder that you can send off of the Estella, or you can send the King Sark and you recycle it a little bit later on. So after a decent shuffle on this one and a fair enough cut, we'll draw our random card off of the back of the Imseti. Okay, that's doable. And now we're going to reset the Woes. So Woes is going to be reset on the left-hand side. If you don't need to send it, then don't send it. So in this scenario here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of the talents, because the talents is the one that is probably a little bit more dictated on by what your opponent does. So with everything else, I can control how I play these, when I play them, when I interact with my opponent, whereas this one, if they don't hand trap me, it's going to be useless for me. At this point here, you would have liked to have thought that there would have been an Ash Blossom, and the next card that's going to come down when I normal summon the Estella, worst case scenario, is going to be an effect failure, and you're like, damn, I could have talents that. Best case scenario, it's an imperm, you're like, okay, I wouldn't be able to talents it anyway. But then that still leaves the door wide open for your King Sark, because you're going to be able to get all 3 names into the graveyard as well. So we'll use Estella, we'll send the Triple Tactic talents as cost. You'll then be able to resolve the Estella, which will allow you to special summon out, wherever it may be, your Sylvie. And Sylvie's effect is going to trigger to grab you the Tails of the White Forest. Now this is where you do get a little bit of additional benefits for the Tails of the White Forest and the Horus engine, because technically Imseti is a spellcaster. So if you were to get Imseti to the board but you don't have access to a White Forest card, you can very easily activate Tails and still complete your search. Now what we're deciding to do here is, technically if you wanted to and you wanted to play around the Nibiru as safely as you possibly could, you would activate King Sark, you'd use King Sark's effect to send from the deck to the graveyard and discard from the hand, the Happy. So this is probably the safer way of doing it, because you want to make sure that your 5th summon is a Nibiru protected play. So we're going to send the Blessing. And then what we'll do is we'll revive 2 from the graveyard. So let's revive Imseti just so that we've got the spellcaster on the board. And then we'll revive the Blessing. Now, keep the other one in the graveyard. You don't need to use that just yet. You're then going to make your 5th summon by overlaying both of these and go into the number 90 Galaxy Ice Photon Lord. You're now technically protected by Nibiru. You could have done that a little bit earlier on in the combo as well. There's not the end of the world on how you'd want to do it, but you've kind of pretty much set up your negate. You could have done it before the Estella if you wanted to, but the idea is that you wanted to try and bait out other hand traps that may have interacted with that element, so that the King Sark and the Horus engine could have resolved. So now that we're at this position here, you want to make sure that if you're going to activate something like Tails, you're going to do it while you control a spellcaster or an illusion. Now, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can very easily grab LZ and then move your place further forward from there. But LZ is just going to give you that level 2 tuner, and then it will search you out the Rusia. But what I quite like to do before I activate the Tails is I would like to get the benefit of being able to send it and then reset it, because then you're not really losing any advantage. Like if I activated this before I made the Reselia, then the Reselia would have to send Droplet or King Sark or even the Woes. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the best out of the reset capabilities of cards like Tails. So we're going to use the Reselia, we're going to send the Tails. This will then allow us to add a spellcaster from the deck to the hand. So you're going to want to add the Iris Sword Soul, and that's going to give you another level 8 monster that, should you want to, now unlocks the capabilities to make a rank 8 play. On top of that, because a spell was sent via card effect, you're going to be able to use the effect of Tails to reset, and you're going to be able to use the effect of Estella to summon itself back. So we'll reset the Tails, and then we'll summon back the Estella. And then what you can do here is you can synchro both of these together, and this is basically just going to give you the fodder back. Now, you could very easily send King Sark, but we can now recycle the talent. So if our opponent wants to hand trap us later on, or if they've already hand trapped us, you can talents them now. So you're basically just putting a pause on the effect of talents, or if you don't feel that this is going to be any use to you, then you can actually send your other cards, or you could technically activate Tails before you make the Diabell and go down that route. But so add back the talents. We'll now activate the Tails. The Tails is then going to get us the LZ. We can then get rid of the Tails. That's going to go to the graveyard. You've still got loads more plays to make. It's crazy how much further this can go. Now, you don't even need to worry about the King Sark. Technically, what you could do as well is you could actually send the King Sark and then recycle that. But we're going to go with sending the Triple Tactic. So you can just see that what we've added back of the Diabell, we're going to get rid of. Like, send the least effective or least useful card for you right now. Honestly, King Sark, I still quite like having it on the board because it means my opponent has to get rid of it. The Woes is still going to use effectiveness during my opponent's turn, and so is Droplet. So summoning down LZ, sending off the Triple Tactic talents. This will then allow me to grab either Sylvie for a follow-up, but if you want to extend further and get an additional tuner to the board, you don't want Sylvie, you want Reselia. And you've still got the ability to bring back the Sylvie from the graveyard as well. So you're still in a very, very good position. So now at this point here, what you can do is you can summon down the Reselia, and then you've got a couple of different options. If you want to make sure, if you want to get the draw off of the Reselia, you can actually just send King Sark, but you'd make sure you bring back Happy first, then send King Sark to draw a card. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to want to recycle the Diabell Queen during your opponent's turn, and you're not really relying about this staying on the board because you feel that the random draw is going to be more effective for you. Now, obviously, in this scenario, it's not. It gives us a bit of crackback should we want it, but it does still give you that dig down option. Now, at this exact moment in time here, you've got a couple of different options. If you want to add in an Omni Negate on the board, you go into Mud Dragon. You can then use Mud Dragons, which would fuse itself and the Diabell Queen, or of course, you can bring back the Sylvie to get you into a Albion, which would then lead you into Dragoon. So that's option number one, just coming off of these two cards here and recycling some cards from the graveyard. Option number two, which I think is probably going to be a heck of a lot more fun, is you could actually, if you wanted to, synchro into a 6, but we're just going to go wham bam, thank you ma'am, and synchro into a 12. And the reason you're going to do this is you're going to get that random draw without even needing to send King Sark. If you wanted to keep King Sark on the board, then by all means you could do. So we're going to the Centurion Lagita. This is going to let us draw one more card. Droplet. Okay, fine. We've got another form of interruption. And then what you're going to want to do here, you're probably going to want to put the Lagita up in the extra monster zone because you're going to need 2 spaces. Is you're going to be able to use the effect of Sylvie in the graveyard. This will then put back the Reselia to the extra deck, summon itself back, negate its effects. Because there is a monster on the board that has its effects negated, you will now summon down the Iris Sword Soul, and now you can synchro into another 12. So your 2 options for your other 12s can be option number 1, Despian Lulu Walif. Now, technically, if you wanted to get Lulu Walif into rotation, you would make Lulu Walif first instead of the Lagita, so that when you make the Lagita, you would then be able to increase all of your monsters by 500 attack. But because we're going first, you probably want to be more defensive and leave more of your monsters in defense in case you get hit with a lightning storm. So I personally like the idea of going into the Super Heavy Samurai Master. And in doing so, what I can do is set 2 droplets so that during my opponent's turn, I can activate one of the droplets, send the Nibiru to negate. And then when they activate something else, I just go, okay, cool, Super Heavy Samurai, draw 3. So that replenishes my entire hand. I still have the option of Woes, I still have the option of Queen, and the best thing is because I've got LZ on the board, if I go Queen and go, cool, let's go Queen into Zapper, I can then use Zapper's effect, so technically if we rewind this a little bit before I use Droplet, we can actually discard the Nibiru off the Zapper, pop a back row, Shrimp's effect, Synchro, LZ, and the Shrimp go into Herald of the Arclight. And I haven't even used Woes yet. Keep in mind that's still not used. And now, of course, if your opponent activates anything, we can go Super Heavy Samurai, draw 3. If your opponent activates anything that's more damaging, you can Herald of the Arclight it. And then, of course, once Herald of the Arclight is off the board, you now have the ability of activating any of the droplets, which can send any of the cards you've just drawn. And you still have the ability of activating Woes. Woes can, of course, still get you a monster back to the board. But what you'd want to make sure you do first is, once you've used the Diabelle Queen's effect, is you can use Sylvie or Rusia's effect first, put this back into the extra deck. And the reason you would do this is that when you activate Woes, Woes would then summon out from hand or deck, and what you'd want to go for, it would be a level 2, so just get Estella onto the board or either one. You would resolve the Woes effect to Synchro Summon. This would then allow you to Synchro Summon into a level 6, being the Sylvia. This will then Book of Moon your opponent's entire board, and you still need, like, you can still hold on to the drops if you want to, you don't need to worry about those, but basically what you've kind of done here, you haven't even used the Galaxy Eye, so let's say you use the Galaxy as well. You've basically stopped your opponent basically playing. You've both eclipsed them, you've Herald of the Arclighted them, you've drawn 3 off of the Samurai, you've popped one of their back rows off of the Shrimp, you've recycled some of your materials, they pretty much have nothing less. You draw for turn. I'm going to ignore the fact we got King Sark because that's just going to make our board even stronger than it needs to be. But straight away you just go, okay, cool, attack mode, attack mode, attack mode. Well, sorry, don't put that in attack mode. That'd be stupid. They're going to attack in defense. Duh. So then, as this currently stands here, what you need to remember as well is Illusion and Spellcaster Synchro monsters you control gain 500 attack. So this is going to be a base of 24 and do piercing damage. You've still got the ability that should you have activated anything during your opponent's turn, LZ would be back in your hand. Should you have sent a spell and trap during your opponent's turn to the graveyard to activate something like the Diabelle Queen, which you could have done, or you would have done by sending one of the droplets, Estella would have come back to the board as well. So you would have just recycled so much material, it's absolutely insane. Not to mention the draws you got. And in an ideal scenario, you're probably keeping that first King Sark on the board, just so that if your opponent does break, if they don't get rid of that King Sark, you're just going to come back with full force, and they're definitely not going to be able to break on that position in retaliation as well. So that was it for the first test hand. I hope I put that in as much detail for you as possible. There's loads of different routes of play, as you saw, and then there was loads of different options to interact during your opponent's turn. And the best thing about it is, even if they Dark Ruler you, you still have Woes to fall back on. You still have the ability to go Woes and Estella or LZ in the not Estella or LZ, sorry, Rusia and Sylvia in the graveyard. You'd still have had droplets, so you still would have had forms of interaction that would have dealt damage or caused opponent issues, basically. Evenly would have been a bit of a pain because you didn't have an Omni Negate on the board, and that's where you kind of want Dragoon or you want to go Visas Aritara, but I feel that that's when Game 2 kind of comes into play a little bit more, because I think in Game 2 you're probably going to be expecting board breakers like Evenly Matched a lot more. And that's where you would definitely focus on making sure you put an Omni Negate on the board so that you have that ability to stop that happening. Even then, you still would have had a fairly decent hand, and you could have held back resource as well. So test hand number 2 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so a bit of a downside by hard opening up Blessing. Like, it is what it is. You're playing 3 Mseti. You want to be seeing your 3 of them more consistently. Now let's see if there is a way to bridge the two. I'm not sure if there's a way to bridge White Forest to Horus without going into Zombie Vampire, which would be a bit of a waste of resource. But as long as you open up a White Forest with a sort of spell, you're going to have a decent amount to go off of. So you'll normally summon down the Estella. This is the biggest downside, in my opinion, between this and the Toy Box version, is technically if you were to replace any of these cards in the hand with access to the Toy Box engine, Estella will still get advantage. So like if you went Estella, send any of the pieces of the Toy Box, even if they stop the Estella with, at this moment in time, could be an Impermanent Ayla or an Ash, you would still get that level 4 on the board, which would then still ultimately search you out a card or give you the ability to extend further. If my opponent stops here, yeah, we're pretty much screwed and we are falling back on the Nibiru, but that's just part and part of the game. Sylvie comes out, Sylvie's effect will trigger. This one you're going to go for Tails. I mean, you could go for Woes. It wouldn't make much of a difference, to be honest, because you're not really... I mean, you don't need to activate Tails to search. You're just going to be using it as fodder to send, and that's where LZ's going to come into play. So you'd go LZ, send the Tails. Tails would reset. LZ would then grab you the level 4. I mean, you could probably make a synchro play before this if you wanted to. It really is up to you. So let's add Russia. There we go. And now you're pretty much, unfortunately, just going to be going down like the White Forest route of play. But I'm going to show you how you could risk it to bridge into Imseti and everything else. So you'd go into a 6, where it may be. So you go for the Rusilia. Definitely always use a Stella. Just always do that. Rusilia will then send the tails. This will then allow you to add one from deck to hand. And the one you're going to want to go for is Iris Sword Soul, which is why you get that bridge. This is like the mini bridge, because Iris Sword Soul gives you that other level 8 on the board that if you are desperately trying to push into the Horus cards because you don't think your end board's going to be good enough, that is your route of play. Now, if you do think that your end board's going to be good enough, you can literally just go Russia. Sorry, we need to resolve Stella first. It's coming back to the board. You could just go Russia, and then you'd go for a Synchro 6. And then again, that's where Mud Dragon comes into play. That leads you into Dragoon. You'll have the discard of being able to get Bless into the graveyard and everything else in between. So you'd still have more plays to make. The ideal scenario on this one is that you can very easily go into Queen. Queen's effect will allow you to get back that spell or trap that you want. So we'll bring back the Priority map. You can now Russia to then risk it for the biscuit to draw you that random card. Not going to get you any further forward. But now what you've got the ability for is you can still use Sylvie. Sylvie will then summon back to the board, put in the Rusilia back into the extra deck. You've got a monster on the board with its effects negated, so you're going to summon down the Iris Sword Soul. And then what you've got here is this is how you're going to bridge or attempt to bridge into the Horus monsters, is you would overlay both of these and go into Zombie Vampire. And that is you like seriously digging. Even if the Zombie Vampire fails in this scenario, so let's say, let's detach, let's put a White Forest Synchro in the graveyard because we can recycle that very easily. We're going to mill 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it did hit by getting us the Imseti. Not that it's going to give us anything more because we kind of want this in the hand. But let's say it whiffs. Let's say it just doesn't get us anything. You can still end your board, even if you do it like this, by going Synchro these two together, go into Mud Dragon effect to fuse these two, go into Albion's effect, banishing the Mud Dragon as Dark Magician, and then banish itself as the Dragon, gets you into Dragoon. Okay, so you've got Zombie Vampire and Dragoon, and the only reason you've got Zombie Vampire is because you've attempted to try and dig. If you didn't want to go down the Zombie Vampire route, your end board would basically still be Dragoon, Iris Sword Soul, and Diabell Queen, plus your 3 cards in the hand. So you'd still have a crazy amount of advantage. It still gets you what you want. But like I was trying to show you, I was trying to show you the only bridge that we have in this deck to try and get like Imseti into the graveyard, or try and get your Horus monsters onto the board into rotation if you don't open up Imseti. But that's just risk and reward. Like, you see just how good the White Forest deck is on its own in general. Like, it's able to get into Dragoon very easily. It's able to get into the Diabell Queen. And then the Queen's still going to cause your opponent decent issues, because the Queen can, when they activate an effect, can summon out Sylvira, which is going to be a Book of Eclipse on their board, or technical full their side of the board, Book of Moon. You still have the Omni Negate off of the back of Dragoon, and you still have 3 cards in the hand that could ultimately end up being droplets. It could be Imperms, Veilers, Ashes, if you do side them in, Dominus Purges, you name it. You get like quite a lot to do, be able to do that. Okay, so now what we do is we're going to go second. We'll start showing you what the 6th card does for the deck. We'll start showing you the aggression that the deck can make, and that's where Lulu Walif is really going to come into its own, because that's where Lulu Walif will boost up all of your monsters, and you're basically turning fairly decent and fairly strong monsters anyway even stronger. So 1, 2, guess we're breaking boards, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, now the chances are what you've got to risk here is if you Nibiru them, you can't evenly them. The issue of, not the issue, but the benefit of opening up 2 evenly matched is technically I can either go draw phase, battle phase, evenly matched, and then negate the first evenly match. I go, okay, cool, second evenly match, and I've cleared off their entire board. I've got Nibiru as a crackback should they have stopped me with loads of hand traps, and then I would still be able to get the Speller Trap off the back of the Sylvie. So this hand's actually not bad at all. If I feel that Nibiru is going to be more effectful, like if I'm up against a deck that just auto loses to Nibiru or just can't produce a decent enough board off the back of Nibiru, then I'll drop Nibiru on them. So you've got a couple of different options there. But the idea is, at the very least, let's say we keep all of this hand as it is. You can go normal summon the Sylvie. They can then interact with the Sylvie if they want to, but if they don't, you're just going to be able to get into tails. You're going to be pushing for the aggressive loop or the aggressive play here. You don't even need to activate tails right now, and you can very easily just go, cool, LZ, send the tails. Tails will ultimately end up resetting after you've resolved the LZ to grab you the Rusia. Rusia, what you want to make sure you do before you summon down the Rusia and then use its effect to draw is you do want to deck fin. Like, you've already used your normal summon. So activating tails to get a Stellar isn't going to get you anywhere without the ability of discarding it and getting it to the graveyard. So again, you're not benefiting a huge amount. So what you can do here, now that we've shuffled up a little bit, you can go Rusia, you can ditch a card. Actually, I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this because I'm not going to do this now. I want to deck fin as much as I possibly can. That's the whole idea of this. Now, obviously, if you're going second, you very easily go into the Sylvia. The Sylvia will book a moon your opponent's board. I'm going to go into the Rusia. This is going to go there. Rusia's effect's going to go off. We'll ditch an evenly. Like I said, you're probably going to activate an evenly. I'd be amazed if you're going second and you choose not to activate an evenly, but that's neither here nor there. Now, unfortunately, you're not going to get the level 2 back into rotation. So that is the one risk that you do take. But in doing so, you're basically just adding Iris Sword Soul. And this is all on the assumption that you're trying to push more through, basically. So shuffle this up. We've deck finned by one more additional card. Summon down the Rusia. Rusia's effect will trigger. I could activate the tails, to be honest, and search if I wanted to. I mean, yeah, we might as well activate the tails first to deck fin. Let's deck fin and get a Estella to the hand. Like, I don't want to draw an Estella, basically. Doesn't really add me anything. I want to draw an Imseti. That's kind of what I'm digging for, but with one draw, I'm not going far. Okay, so we'll shuffle this up. We'll send the second Evilly off the Rusia. We'll draw a card. Dominus Purge, not bad. And now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because of the route of play we decided to go. Now, obviously, if you went into the Sylvia, you'd book a moon, everything, and then you'd try and build your board further from there. But in this scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to be putting back the Rusia from the board back to the extra deck to put a monster on the board with its effects negated. We'll then be able to summon down the Iris Sword Soul. This is how you're going to get your level 8 onto the board because you've got a monster with its effects negated. And now, of course, you can synchro into a 12. And again, this is just me digging for cards. Like, you don't have to be making these plays. This would then pop one of your opponent's cards. Monsters of 2k or less cannot be destroyed by a battle. Probably would have been better leaving this on the board and get rid of this because that's got the weaker attack. Again, we haven't really been able to get anywhere. We've just been trying to dig for the Imseti cards. So that's just the risk and reward of it all. But at the end of the day, we've got this at 35. We've popped one of our opponent's cards. I could very easily have gone Despian Lulu Walif, and I could very easily have gone into the Super Heavy Samurai monster. But the other is by going into this, you've popped a card, you can attack a card, you can attack a card there. You're still then setting back up onto a Dominus Purge, a Call by the Grave, and a Nibiru. You've still got your starter in the form of a Stella to go again, and you've got the LZ to start off. So you've still got plays to make. We just didn't take the most optimal route because I was trying to show you the different options. Like, so a lot of people will be like, what happens when I don't see Imseti? What happens when I don't see this? Well, the deck can still function, the deck can still play, but I wanted to show you the routes that you have in order to get some draws there. So in that scenario, we ended up getting 2 draws, one off of Rusia, one off of the Lagita, sorry, and then that's kind of where we ended up going. On the next one, I'll show you the most optimal route. Like, we'll just push everything we can for OTKs or breaks. And like I said, we had 2 evenly matches and a Nibiru. So we're either going to Nibiru our opponent or we were going to evenly match them. So if you evenly match them and they leave a monster on the board, you go, okay, cool. You'd make that entire play. You would draw 2 new cards. You'd make the Lagita, and then you would pop that one card remaining as well. So you've completely broken their opponent's board within reason. Anyway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just taking that out of the equation, would you activate Dominus Purge in this position? Honestly, I've got the King Sark. I probably would. No matter what I draw, I've got the King Sark, so I don't need to use Imseti's effect. So we will Dominus Purge our opponent here. We will Veiler our opponent. We'll draw for turn, and the draw for turn is an evenly matched. Now this is where we're going to have to try and bridge, and it's a lot easier to bridge your Horus cards into the White Forest cards. So it's up to you here. You're either going to go evenly and then try and train Droplet, but we've hit our opponent with 2 hand traps. It'll be amazing if they're still able to play. If I'm worried they're going to pop the King Sark, then I'm obviously going to evenly match them. If I'm not worried about what their board presence is, I'll leave it alone because these are just free fodder. So we'll activate the King Sark. We'll use King Sark to send the Blessing. This will then send... We can't use Imseti's effect, but we can still revive it from the graveyard. So send Imseti. I'm now no longer going to evenly match my opponents. So let's send that, which will send me the third Horus monster. So at the very least, if I really, really wanted to, I could just go, okay, cool, well, I've stopped my opponent with those 2 hand traps. I can just go, cool, bring back Happy, bring back Imseti, bring back Blessing, go battle phase, attack, attack, attack. And if I wanted to, I could activate Droplet to send cards, after I've already attacked them, send them to weaken and then attack to push through game. So that's literally just route 1, go for game. What I'm going to do is show you how you're bridging the 2 together. So let's leave one of the cards in the graveyard just in case our opponent stops plays or anything else like that. We still have the ability to build on. We are going to overlay both of these. We're going to go in Zombie Vampire. I know, creative, new, different, blah, blah, blah. This is your only bridge. This is the only route you've got. But at this point here, what you're digging for is a Sylvie or an Estella. You're looking for one of 6 cards in your entire deck. The smart thing to do, actually, with hindsight, would be to leave Imseti in the graveyard. Because... actually, it doesn't make any difference. Doesn't make any difference whatsoever, but we'll do it this way. Anyway, we're going to detach the material. We're going to mill 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We got exactly what we wanted. So, Estella. We'll then be able... they go to the graveyard. We'll then be able to use Estella's effect. Now, before you do that, make sure you bring back the last Horus monster, whichever one you haven't brought back. Use Estella, send King Sark, not King Sark's effect, Estella's effect to resolve, sorry. Sylvie's effect gets you Tails. Activate Tails, grab you LZ. And now we're just pretty much going off, in a sense. So we've got LZ. LZ will lead us to a tuner in a minute anyway, so synchro these 2 together. This is how we're now going to buff all of our cards, so I'll show you how Lulu Walif now comes into play. So put Lulu Walif on the board, probably put her up in the extra monster zone because I don't think I'm going to need to get rid of that. Use LZ, send the Droplet, search yourself out the Rasia, which is your final tuner that you need. Already gone through Rasia. Oh, Rasia got milled. Uh-oh. SpaghettiOs. Okay, we'd have to do this a little bit differently. I forgot the Rasia got milled. So let's rewind. You would have to do it a little bit differently then. We'd have to go, rather than Sylvie and the Horus monster into the 12, you'd have to go Sylvie and Estella into Rasia. Rasia, send Droplet. Ultimately end up summoning back Estella. Search you out, Iris Sword Soul. There we go. Synchro these 2 into Queen. Queen's effect gives you back a spell or trap of your choosing. We'll bring back the Tails, because at least if I send it off of any effect, it will reset, because we haven't reset it yet. So we have got... so we've got the monster with its effects negated. We've got Iris Sword Soul, which gives us another 12, which is fine. Can I then get LZ? Yes, I can. This is going to be pretty nice. Not gonna lie. Let's do it this way. So we go LZ, send Tails. Tails will help me reset. LZ will search you out follow-up. Not that you need it. So we'll search you out a Sylvie for the follow-up. And then what you do, synchro these 2 together and go into... could we have got one more on board? Oh, maybe we can. I think I'm trying to optimize this. I think I can go one more and buff everything. So if we now go... Oh, Sylvie would have to put back the Rasia. The issue is I can't sync these off yet. I need another zone. So I'd need to put Queen into the extra monster zone so that I could now have a monster with effects negated. Summon down Iris Sword Soul. You'd sync Imseti and Sylvie together. You'd go into Lulu Walif. And then what you do... sorry, it'd be Sylvie and Sword Soul together. And then what you do is you'd go LZ plus Imseti for Chaos Angel. And in doing so, because Chaos Angel left the extra deck, Lulu Walif will trigger, making this 3k, 35, 3k, 4k. that's your strongest attack board. Right there. And that's pretty good, because you've got your follow-up there, you've got a restarter off the back of the tails as well. And then as soon as you've got Queen's trigger, because Queen can send the tails, tails will reset it during your opponent's turn. You'll then still have Sylvie to reset, you'll get a Zell back to your hand as well. Like, your resource loop after this would be crazy. Not that you would need it, because if this isn't pushing in for game, I don't know what is. And that's if you didn't or didn't use evenly matched. So, yeah, that was kind of cool. So that's the aggression between the two. Like, when I'm comparing this, I'm always going to be comparing this to the toy box version. I feel the toy box version gives you a little bit more resilience against certain hand traps and against certain interactions. Because I feel with the Horus card, or the Horus engine, what it basically does, it says, if you hand trap me here, I'm going to shift from my first engine, which will be White Forest, to the Horus engine. So Horus is playing backup. In the toy box version, it's basically like, even if you stop me here, my toy box is still triggering. It's going to get me to the end goal anyway that I want it to. So you're getting the best of both. I really did want to try and put the toy box engine in here, and you can. You would sacrifice a lot of your hand traps. You would sacrifice like evenly matched and talents in the main deck to fit it in, even if you put a smaller engine in. The issue came with the extra deck. Now with the extra deck, there is probably 1, 2... as much as I hate to say it, 3, 4, 5, and maybe 6 that you could sacrifice. But what you're sacrificing these for will be, will basically be like level 8 synchros. If anything, I'd also want to consider the Bestials in the main deck. But if I'm going to do that, I would take out the Dominus Purges. And if I put the Bestials into the deck, it then unlocks the extra deck to play Bestial Dispatter. It will then unlock the extra deck to play Cyphering Lord Omega. And the cards like that in its space. Anyway, I do enjoy this deck. I enjoy White Forest in general. I enjoy the Horus engine, and I like the way that the two of them can work together quite nicely. So I hope this has given you a bit of an insight into the deck, what it does, how it works. Like I said, a lot of that was a bit of back and forth testing, trying to improve the plays, but also trying to show you the different routes and options that the deck has. So you can kind of see different plays yourself, test it out, and then go, I prefer to do the combo this way, I prefer to get this end goal, and then obviously the different board state that you're going to be facing down will then dictate what routes you take as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions at all, like always, put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.